Hey, welcome everyone to Midway Radio. It's your boy Carlos, and we're going to take this episode. This is going to be the first episode of probably an ongoing discussion that we have, because basically the world is falling apart, and we're trying to make sense of it all. So to help all of us figure it out and see what we come up with, we're going to go ahead and introduce people like Ryan Brockmeyer.
Hey, what's up, good people? Good to see you all back on the show in a while. It's been a minute since we've done a show, so
there. Oh, look, DJ Sean Doe.
Yo, what's up, everybody?
Yeah, son. Let's go ahead and say hello and a welcome to Risky Business.
Hello.
Hello.
We're back. Hello.
You guys know this guy. B-Boy B is here.
What's up, everybody? It's B-Boy B.
And
welcome back to the show.
That's right.
Thank you. It's been a while.
And another welcome back to the show, Amani Conley.
Yo, what's poppin', everybody? How y'all feeling this evening?
Doing good.
Not that we got a time stamp on it.
So yeah, as you guys can probably tell, there's just a lot happening in the world, and so especially in the Chicago area. So we wanted to bring attention to that, and maybe even bring some clarity to all of the discussions that are happening, like on Facebook, maybe a couple on Twitter. But yeah, so how do we even start this? Like, this is such a huge topic.
Yeah, and there's no way that we're going to be able to cover everything that we want or would need to in the time that we're going to talk today, but I think the Midway Project puts us in kind of maybe a unique perspective to talk about this, because we're all a part of a project that that's created from Black culture, and that that includes everyone, and that is very inclusive, and that's how all of us, for the most part, have met through this culture. And I think that I think it's important that we say something to not only the community of people that support us and that we know, but to also anybody else that might be watching this, to possibly educate and bring a different perspective on things, and hopefully change things for the better with what we can do with this show.
So let's take it all the way back to what set off this movement. And sure, it's been building up for
Ever?
Dare I say centuries? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that ignited the keg was George Floyd being arrested, tried, and executed all at the same time.
Yeah.
And I think it's fair to say that people are quite tired of the same story happening over and over again. It doesn't matter the age. It doesn't matter the sex or the gender. And people of all colors, quite honestly, are tired of hearing it's the same exact story year in and year out, and then we have people that are in power that continue to promise that they're going to fix it, and they just don't. So we are now seeing people taking the power that they have always had, realizing that power, and then leveraging that power to make change. And that's why the Black Lives Matter movement is in full effect, and you have people of all walks of life that are participating in this. We've seen countless news videos and read news articles and everything about everything that's happening. And so this is what it looks like when people are tired of being treated unfairly. Is that fair to say?
The first thing that needs to be realized is that when people say Black Lives Matter, it's a lot of things that's going on there, right? You got the Black Lives Matter movement, right? You have that, and then you have the statement Black Lives Matter. It's just that.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And a lot of us a lot of us just want people to understand that our lives matter. Our lives did not matter for so long that just this statement in itself is strength. So when you hear somebody say Black Lives Matter, understand that Black people probably have been treated the worst on the planet. And then so if somebody's saying Black Lives Matter, they just want you to understand that a life that you might have not thought about before means something.
Right.
And you should pay attention to that. You know what I mean?
And to go constitutionally, at one point, it said that Black lives were 3/5 human.
Fifths. Yep.
Well, just to chime in on that, and this is going to sound really controversial and make me sound like a bit of a butthole, but back then, the Black Lives mattered a lot more than they did today because they were someone's property.
Yeah.
Meaning that someone was losing an asset, someone was losing dollar bills in the ledger. The Black lives were insured to such a degree to where if you lost one, you would get paid out a huge sum of money because of what was considered the worth of that slave or that enslaved person over a period of time. So it's just a really interesting way. Go ahead.
Can I push back just a little bit?
Yeah.
Would it be a little more accurate to say Black lives didn't really matter, Black muscle mattered?
We can definitely make that differentiation. It's just that in its simplest forms, it was a Black life because that muscle was attached to a life. I mean, people would get mad if you damaged their Black life. Mm-hmm. It's like, yo, you're messing up my property over here. So yes, it was muscle, it was the body, everything. When we think about life, we're not thinking about, I'm not meaning it life in the sake of them living a fruitful life, you know, freedoms and liberties and such that any God-given human should have, but their life in and of itself being of value to someone else, to the fact that they would insure it and get mad and take each other to court and sue and jail each other for the destruction of our bodies at one time or another. And it's just completely different now. We're hunted in the streets. It's open season and people have been mad about it for some time. This is a powder keg, yeah, but what about the Detroit riots? Once again, police brutality. What about the Watts riots? Once again, police brutality. What about the Rodney King riots? Police brutality. Civil rights movements. With Bull Connor, police brutality. There's an underlying thread that we tend to see in all of these instances. Most of the time, it's police brutality.
When people had property and property ran away, which is, I think, the root of what police departments' attitudes are today, is that all the citizens back then that were white gave themselves the power to police. And when somebody's slave ran away, everybody looked out for that and either had him brought back or whatever the case may be. But that's where the root of today's modern day policing comes from. It's policing that was created to keep that property that may and did run away.
This is going to sound like a joke, but that brings this whole Karen phenomenon into complete focus. You know what I mean? Like
they're
that.
busybodies because they were trained to be busybodies, meaning
Well,
nosy. They're in people's business
Yeah.
because that's what they've been trained to do culturally and like socially to behave that way.
Yeah.
And it's been completely accepted.
It's a new. It's not new. It's a mob mentality. It's an old mob mentality morphed into a new cloak, right? It's and you know, me and Sean have talked about this about in the amendments made to the 13th Amendment, the changes made to the 13th Amendment created loopholes. So now you can they abolished slavery, but really all it was amended to let it morph into something else.
Mm-hmm.
So they could continue it just under the guise of some other bullshit that they'll
become institutionalized now and legal.
Yeah, I mean, it says a person cannot be enslaved unless found guilty of a crime. Unless they're incarcerated. A guilty person who's in jail is legally a slave. It says so in our Constitution, technically.
And their attitude was, now we have to just go out and arrest them.
Yes.
Yeah. And then when you put somebody in a system like that, then you have them, as you know, as you said, institutionalized, right? So we all know that if someone gets either trumped up on some BS charge or even something minor, like a marijuana charge or something, and they can trump it up to get you, if they can score that felony somehow against you, that now you're marked, and now you're caught up in a system. Because the reality is if you somehow end up getting caught up in the system and obtaining a felony, and you get out, you serve your time, what do you do?
Mm-hmm.
You it's almost next to impossible to get a good job with that.
The system just evolves. The system just evolves. It's the same thing as when slavery was quote unquote legal. It just evolves into whatever generation that it currently is. I mean, there's more, you know, there's more African Americans in prison now than there were slaves back then. Like, that's not coincidence. That's not that's not bad apples or people, you know, doing. That's not a blanket statement to say that everybody that's in the prison system is innocent. But we all know that far and away there's way too many people that are in there that shouldn't be in there for things.
But
and
that's
getting,
you know,
into
conspiracy theory there, Ryan. That's conspiracy theory sounding that some system is systematically plotting to incarcerate a large number of one group.
Before we go too far down, because this is the to help this conversation that's about to happen. I almost want to define the rules. You know what I mean? Because this is such a nebulous argument, right? So, what is systemic racism?
Well, I mean, I can give you like 100 examples just from my childhood, you know, where we're just hanging out and we're 10, 11 years old and we're sitting on the front steps or at the church steps or at the school steps, and the cops would literally roll by real slow and then point at us and say, hey, if you're here when we come back around, we're going to arrest you and pin some kind of charge on you, either murder or whatever, or attempted murder because somebody just got shot at down the block, and it's going to be on you. They didn't care if we did it or not. They were going to pick up whoever they picked up and just pin it on them. And Chicago in the 70s and 80s was the police department was known for that, would just, you know, beat you to the point where you basically said, all right, I'll sign whatever you need to do, just leave me alone, and sign a confession that was falsely, you know, acquired. And that's how systematically things were done. And if it was being done to me in a Puerto Rican neighborhood, it was surely being done in a black neighborhood.
So what B-Boy B is saying, I've had experience with that also, and my father's had experience with that, my grandfather's had experience with that. So I just want to let like people know, like this has been happening forever. It's been happening so long with us that it just becomes normal.
Since people from Africa were stolen from their home and brought over here to work for white people, they set up the system for that to continue to happen. Systematic racism is literally a set of rules and a system and rules set up to continue to keep what benefits white people and keeps them in power and keeps other people down, specifically African Americans, to benefit them, to continue to benefit them. Whatever those rules may be, like creating things like the criminalization of drugs instead of socially trying to fix a problem, you create something that you can go after people. I mean, and drugs is just a small thing. Like they'll go after anybody for anything. They'll make everything up, right? We all know that. So like setting up a system where you can lock people up for minor charges and work their way into larger things, again, to bring back the felony, to create the felony, you get someone in the system, institutionalized, then you keep people from being able to maneuver and move forward. And that's, to me, that's what systematic racism is.
Systematic, when we talk about good old America, we're not talking about the French or the Spanish. We're talking about those English pilgrims that came on over. First group of us came over, indentured servants, 7-year, maybe 10, depending on what their contract. It was a contract labor. It's documented. It's well documented. Gradually, in the Virginias and the Carolinas, statutes and codes were passed legally that started to take away and dismantle the rights of free and those indentured coming over. Marriage laws were put in place to where if a black man had a child with a white woman, the child would be a slave, but and the white man with a black woman, it wouldn't. Then they changed it to where it was one way. I mean, systematically means progressive. If you systematically dismantle something, you're progressively taking it apart piece by piece. So first they started gradually taking away the liberties. Once the legal system was in a place where we could be enslaved completely and totally, body, mind, and soul, so to speak, they were good here in the States. We're not talking about them systematically dismantling a culture by bringing you over on slave ships, putting you amongst people who you're unfamiliar with, and then doing atrocities and cruelties that would make the strongest person wretch and want to curl over and die, meaning emasculating men in front of their fellow tribesmen, killing babies that are still within wombs. This is systematic terror. Then after some miracle, whatever, say it was prophecy, say it was divine providence, we're freed. Now, we're off the plantation. It's illegal to be a vagrant now, to not have a job when we were just let off of this plantation, and now we're locked up and put on chain gangs. Angola prison in Georgia, I believe, Angola, is that Louisiana? It's down there in the South. One of the worst chain gang prisons there were for vagrancy. People going from a town to town looking for their relatives that were so up and down the river. They're now being put in chains. Same thing here now when we get into the early 80s. Some of y'all brothers can definitely relate to it, B and Doe. Carlos probably, loitering laws. I couldn't hang out on the corner with more than 2 of my homies. Otherwise, it was mob action and they can take me in for jail, and now I got papers on me. Systematically dismantling rights to where it leads to where you have no choice but to be entered into the system. So what they're doing is, instead of making it to where you have to be 1 in 100 to get placed in the prison system because everything is set up to where people don't want to go into the prison system, it's 1 in 100 that we survive not actually being entered into the prison system in some shape, form, or fashion. The systematic has been going on for quite some time I can go even further back than that if we want to get into it. So when we talk about systematic, it's these gradual pulling away of the pieces of the puzzle to where, technically they ripped the center out and now they're just picking the borders apart. Soon there won't be any picture left and they can start putting that puzzle back together they want to. So it's an insidious, it's a very insidious thing.
Yes.
Well said.
And
Well
systemic,
said.
and as you said, systemic is generational, generation after generation after generation on both sides. And
Mhm.
some people, it's actively telling your children this is how it is. Hate these people for these reasons, or whatever the case may be, or you were put in this position because, or it's just your general actions because after a while it just becomes ingrained in what you do.
Yeah.
And the because of the laws are ever evolving, the current situation, the current system is very complicated, and it is going to be hard to change. But to understand how we got here is not complicated and hard to understand that.
At all.
And that's just by facts. That's not conspiracy theories. It's a fact that there were people in North America thousands of years before it was quote unquote discovered on there. And systemic goes with everything. Education is systemic. So if you have white people writing the education system and they want to talk about an Italian person discovering America, guess what? That's what's going to be the predominant story for years and years and years. So now when people are toppling statues of Christopher Columbus, people are all upset. You're changing history or this and that. No, history was always history, but the history that you were told was not the correct history.
Preach.
It's,
So
over
who's really
400
changing
years
it?
ago, or over 400 years ago is when Africans were brought here against their will to help build this country. And
Not all of them, but some. A great
No, of
majority of
course.
them.
Of course, yeah.
A great
But I mean,
majority of them.
But I mean, how somebody can be so ignorant to not understand why that is wrong, or to acknowledge that African Americans helped build the country, therefore should have a massive say in everything.
In their defense, they don't know. They've not been taught this, Ryan. I've been in the public school systems. I've been in the private school systems. This is not something that's taught. It's like a dirty little secret that's kept in the closet somewhere. It's like,
And again, I'm going to
then
push
this is
back
gonna
just a
sound
little
really
bit.
bogus. Like slavery to America is like the uncle who like fondles relatives. It's like
Mhm. Mm-hmm.
I don't know how else to put it.
So I'm gonna
No.
read what Wikipedia says. It says institutional racism, also known as systemic racism, is a form of racism which is embedded as normal practice within society as an organization. It can lead to such issues as discrimination in criminal justice, employment, housing, healthcare, political power, and education, among other issues. So,
Wikipedia gets it.
yeah,
But there's one, if you really want to take a close look at what that end game is, and this is going to sound bogus again maybe because it's judgy and I'm being judgmental, look at the caste system of India. If you've ever heard of the people that they call Dalits or the untouchables, they have been systematically oppressed in such a way that it's ingrained in their culture
Mhm.
that they can never, not even through the karmic turn of the wheel, elevate from the caste or class that they are in.
right.
And they can't. It was to the point to where they couldn't come in town during certain times. They had to carry brooms with them because they had to sweep up their steps because a Brahmin or somebody of a higher caste couldn't walk in the same area. They were spit on. It's just it's crazy. And it was because systematically they put in laws, scripture, or whatever you want to say, to put this group of people who happen to be highly melanated by some odd chance.
So it's like so we're living in in the golden age of information, right? And it's a double-edged sword. There's so much information out there. There's no excuse for anyone to be ignorant in 2020, but there's also a lot of bullshit out there too for people to take in too. So that's kind of the give and take of the thing. Social media is kind of the same thing. It's amazing that it can bring people together and it can organize and it can do that, but it also gives a lot of people a shield to say some stupid shit on there and to spout ignorance.
And
So
unfortunately, it puts those ignorant people in closer contact with each other, because it used to be you might
Correct.
have 10 or 20 of them in the neighborhood or the community or the town. Now you could get 20,000 of them communicating online, all from their bedrooms or their offices or whatever. So it's like so much easier for the ignorance to congregate.
And
so just let me finish this thought real quick. So whenever I post on social media, I'm maybe in the minority of people who use Facebook and Twitter. Like, I don't go on it every day, but I'll go through and maybe scroll some things or whatever. I try my best not to comment whenever. Like, I don't want to get into those just pointless arguments
Sure.
of things. This has definitely happened well before the recent events of the past few weeks, where I would, occasionally speak up when I need to speak up, give my thought when I need to speak up, or when I want to say something or feel I need to say something. Lately, again, I'm probably doing a little bit more, commenting a little bit more. But when I do comment, I'm try to be as well thought out as I can, because I'm not trying as much as I'm filled with emotion and a lot of times rage and sadness, I still try to stop and think about what I'm saying and how I'm saying it and why I'm saying it. But clearly there's people out there who just, they have their mind made up in different things. So, so some of the conversations that I've been having recently with old friends, not to get into the backstory, but I come from a smaller town originally. So I've got a lot of that small town white America mentality that I see going through my feed. So with old friends, even some family members, they're set in their ways. And as much as I try to explain certain things and explain my thoughts and this and that, it just automatically goes back to the simple slogans or some stupid shit they heard on Fox News or some stuff like that. It automatically goes by that. Not that I didn't already know this, I wasn't already thinking about it, but it's really dawned on me today, where it's just like, you can't even begin to have any sort of legit debate or conversation with these people, with these white people, until they acknowledge and understand the history of how we got to where we are today. You just can't do that. It's just, you're not going to get through that wall. So I guess the one thing where I'm struggling as a white person trying to relay this to fellow white people is, how in the world do you begin to break down that wall to somebody who has their mind made up and doesn't even want to hear facts? That's the thing. It's not, some things you can twist as being conspiracy or whatever, but there's so many facts in history behind things. Like, it shouldn't be that hard to understand certain things.
Systemic racism part comes in. And like Amani said, something that triggered some thoughts. It is taught. Systemic racism is taught, and it is on purpose. And then there's a lot of side things that come off as conspiracy theory because they do the littlest thing. Like, if you watch TV shows from the 70s, the bad guy was always black. If you watch shows before then, the good guy always wore white, the bad guy always wore black. So if you continue to hit people with this subconscious stuff, like black is bad, black, what is it, behind the black ball, and like everything that's bad is black, and
Yeah,
and if
it's
you're
part of
watching
it.
this and you come to me and say, "Ooh, Black Friday is good," now's not the fucking time.
That's right.
Because those are the little sly comments that people slide in there to take away your momentum. You need to pick that out and tell them to stop that bullshit, because that's exactly what it is.
Chad wanted to say something.
I was just gonna say that part of it is the demonization, this and creating this really completely fictional, delusional view of Black Americans, and it's again part of the system. Everything is part of this long-term system. And Ryan, what we were talking about, to me, like you said, there's so much information out there now people are so guilty because willful ignorance is complicity.
Yep.
Okay, so you can get the information. I mean, and the information had been around even in, you could find things in books written by black authors that were telling you the truth. You could have chose to look at these books as opposed to some, scholastic, agendaed scholastic high school book. But now everything is on the internet and it's a lot easier. There's no excuse for you not to be aware of the true history and how the system is set up and what the agendas are. The agendas aren't even hidden anymore. And that's where I think we're getting a lot of this blowback, because people now, like we talked about earlier, people were so comfortable in their passive aggressive racism, and now they're getting called out for it. Right. And so now, since they're called out for it, now they feel like they're being attacked. Like oh my God, I can't be this passive aggressive racist now. And they even get it, like they go as far as thinking some delusional thought, like they're one of their constitutional rights. It's so embedded that they believe it's their constitutional right to be a fucking racist.
Well, it was their constitutional right to have a slave for a minute. So, you know what I'm saying? Like they're fighting to keep, to keep what they feel like they own. You know what I mean? So a lot of times when I encounter white people who ask me, what can we do? What can we do? Like I tell them, like, look, you have to first realize that you benefit off slavery every time you wake up, in your comfort. You know what I mean? Like as a white person, you've benefited off of that. And once you realize that, then maybe you can move a little different. You know what I mean? Maybe you can see the injustice that's happening to black and brown people. You know what I mean? And until you do that, until you acknowledge that, then you won't be able to make a difference. You know what I mean?
You have to start step one in understanding the problem.
I would have answered either A, you take care of y'all jerks, or stand aside and let us take care of them and know that we not gonna come after y'all. Meaning, like, the ones who are down with the team and are trying to affect change, stand to the side and let all of these jerks who want to be racist and who claim they want who want this war, to actually be dealt with mano a mano. If there's any type of mobilization on our side against this, what they consider to be a small 10 to 15% of their population wilding out like this, we have to be sure that if we decide to strike back in any shape, form, or fashion, whether it's economically, whether it's physically, but in any shape, form, or fashion, that they're not going to get scared. That the ones who are asking what it is that they can do not fear the repercussions, because we've proven time and time again we are down for this country through blood, sweat, and tears. And that we have absolutely no agenda against you people, because we have not come after you unmasked or done anything in any shape, form, or fashion which would lead you to believe in wholesale, in a large number, that that's our agenda. We want to be left alone. Y'all don't want to play with us. We took ourselves away and we built our own castles. Y'all came and kicked our sandcastles over when we moved down the beach. Tulsa, Oklahoma. Peachtree down in Georgia. Talking about Bronzeville up here. And there's tons of other places that wealth was just completely murdered and stolen away in any shape, form, or fashion that they can get it. And there was no recompense for us. There was no help or aid or anything. And if we tried to fight back, then the federal government, the state government, the local government, and everybody's up in arms. And now we got everybody coming at us. Or at the very least, the people who should be standing with us, standing aside and letting their wild element come at us. So what can they do? Talk to your family members. And if nothing else, don't stand by and let them put their knee in our neck like that. One of my biggest gripes with seeing all of these videos is that there's some idiot, and I'm sorry people out here who are recording these, because we need y'all to record these things, but come on. Y'all seeing somebody being murdered in front of y'all and y'all not gonna step up and do anything? Are we that cowardly? Have we been that cowed? by this government and this system that there is absolutely no decency and no humanity in us to where we would even want to step up hand in hand. Like, it's like, dude, we know, strip down butt naked and then walk up to the police officer and hug the police officer. What are you gonna say you trying to do? Kill him? You got your penis out or you got your breast out? You trying to stop him from killing somebody? It's like, come on, it's more than one person on the sidewalk. Fear can only get us so long, and as long as we fear enough to let them come in and put their knee on the neck, and we don't have the courage to at least walk up peacefully and get that man up off of him and saying, yo, if you're going to arrest him, okay, you could arrest him, but we're going to surround him until such and such and such. We'll even take him down to the station if he really broke the law like that. We have to be courageous enough as a society, the good people amongst us, to do something like that. If we don't, then we're constantly giving the power to these people who we claim are supposed to be policing and protecting us when we're supposed to be policing and protecting ourselves.
Yep.
We're supposed to be able to check the people in the neighborhood. We're not supposed to be scared of little such and such or such and such down the street or this family down here and that down there, because the community is supposed to be like, nah, it's not how we're going to get down. And that's when we talk about the community policing, which we are constantly trying to get within our community, which is why we talk about defunding the police so that we can start funding community-ran organizations. Everybody else got a neighborhood watch or a neighborhood association who keep their neighborhoods on lockdown. But if we try to do something like that, then it's a big problem. If grandma and grandpa used to sit on the porch and uncles used to sit on the porch with their shotguns and their rifles in certain communities and held it down, who's going to rob the store or who's going to rob something when you know Uncle Wes or Auntie Mary Ann down there got the peace waiting? But like, no, it's not going to go down in our community. What I'm trying to say with all of this, in a nutshell, is that the thing that people can do is do more than just educate yourselves on the issue. You've got to throw your bodies in the issue wholeheartedly, whether it's to keep your errant members of we're going to say the white race from coming and attacking us for absolutely no reason, and or throwing your bodies in the fight to push them back. Because, I mean, come on. It's messing up the country for everybody. It's just screwing it up for everybody.
Right, but
if you want to be American, it's a bad look. Like, it's just a bad look. It's just.
Let's take a look at it from a different angle, though.
Mm-hmm.
I understand what you're saying as far as you can't be afraid, but history has taught us that if you tried to jump in and help, like the Central Park 5. Speaking of which, Central Park used to be a black community, right?
Yep.
They took that shit away, right? Systemic.
They bulldozed it.
See? And so one of the Central Park 5, unfortunately, the kid that spent the most time in jail wasn't even on this list of people that they were looking for, right? So imagine being there where George was getting choked out, and then you run to help. He's got his boys there. You're going to jail too. It's you can almost see it unraveling if you take 2 seconds.
I agree with you, but do you say where your mind is at? Just that's what I mean. The fear of the repercussion of having to go to jail and face that is so strong that you're willing to sit there and watch a man beg his dead mother in heaven to save his life.
So that's what
we become.
That's the fear that we need to overcome. Yeah.
So how easy would it be to overcome that fear when the fear has been instilled in us since slavery? You see what I'm saying?
I think we're seeing
like a brave individual.
Well, where we're at now is just we're at a point where it can't get any worse. Like, we've been watching this happen.
Oh no, it could.
What I'm saying is that we're at a time right now where, like, it's been happening for so long. Like I tell people, when people ask me how am I doing, right? They're like, "How are you doing?" I'm like, the only thing different outside is COVID. Like, that's the only thing different outside.
That's the bad thing, and people don't get that. No, people don't get that.
Police have been killing us forever. I've had to worry about this since I was old enough to understand, old enough to be able to be let outside. You know what I mean? So as a kid, I've always been aware that the police will do this to you. Or if you go in the wrong neighborhood, you know, white folks don't want you over there, so stay stay over here. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So the only thing different outside is COVID right now.
That's it.
Yeah, and that so this kind of comes back to what I first mentioned was when the police would come around and we're not doing anything and we're just hanging out, a bunch of little Latino and black kids hanging out, and they come and roll by and said, if we come here again and we're gonna pin something on you,
Mm-hmm.
you know. That's what they did to that the kid, the young man that killed himself, who wasn't even part
Yeah.
of that mob. Like they pinned something on him, and it turned out horrible. He spent his young adult life in jail. When he got out, he couldn't handle it, and he was a smart young man. But that's the type of thing that when you're a kid, you're like, okay, we're gonna hang out here, we're gonna be tough, and then as soon as you look, oh, there's that cop car coming,
Mm-hmm.
and you try to stay on the steps as long as you can. But when you're like 10, as soon as you're like three houses down, you take off running with all your friends
You guys see
because
that
they
video?
will come.
You guys see that video of that little kid that was shooting basketball in his driveway, and the cops were coming? He hid behind his dad's Jeep,
I haven't seen that, no.
bro.
Yeah. It's just
But it's
you know
instilled, like Sean Doe said,
Yeah.
it's instilled in you. And not only that, but to bring it back to the topic, the main topic here is police brutality. So I grew up in Logan Square, Humboldt Park, and I had a good friend who grew up with me. He was Puerto Rican, and I hate to say this. I'm not going to say his name, but he became a police officer, and we would keep in contact here and there. But after like hanging out, and I was like down, I was like at his family's crib all the time, and whatever. We were like best friends, and I stopped taking his calls. I stopped meeting with him because of his attitude change after he became a police officer. He was okay for about a year or two,
Mm-hmm.
but after that, his whole mindset flipped, and he became extremely racist.
Mm-hmm.
And I told him one time because he said something really stupid that sounded like a police officer. He's like, "Oh, these people are filthy, and it's a den of inequity." And I was
mm,
just like, "Whoa!"
mm-hmm.
Like we grew up with blacks and Latinos. You're talking about us and blacks like you're not one of us. And he wasn't at that point. He was a police
Police
officer,
officer.
and
Yeah.
that's it. So
Yeah.
it's not only instilled in white people, but cops all together, no matter what they are, black or white or Latino, they get this mentality that it's them against
Against
us. But
us.
when they're not supposed to be that way, it's supposed
Right.
to be you're there to protect, serve and protect. It says it right on your door.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
let me
But
pick
that's
up.
the attitude change,
They forgot the serve part, and
and the protect part
well,
too.
they're protecting. They're just protecting their system.
Let me pick up where B left off. Because if you don't think that people's mentality changes, you are 100% incorrect. I
Definitely.
went through basic training for the army, and I'm not gonna lie, I signed up for the army to go to school because I grew up half a block off the project, so I've seen some shit, and I knew that I didn't want to live like that no more.
Hmm.
So I used the military to go to school, and I remember one of the first days of basic training, we were all in this room. There was like hundreds of us, and they said, "Why are you here? Everyone who's here to get away from their parents, raise your hands." And a bunch of people raised their hands. If you join the army to for school, Raise your hand. All of us raise our hands a little bit more. Who's here to kill? Everyone's looking at each other. Some of them little loose nuts and bolts people raised their hands. You know what I mean? By the end of that session, I'm a smartass. I never raised my hand again, unless you were talking about school. I wasn't in all this, right? They had everyone raising their hand. Who's here to kill, kill, kill? Everyone's raising their hands. I didn't. Because, again, I'm a smartass, but eventually they got to me. Eventually, I was a killing machine. You couldn't stop me. I was ready to throw knuckles at whoever the hell looked at me the wrong way. That was it.
But that's group thinking. That happens across any type of organization like that, whether it's a street gang, whether it's a military organization, whether it's a police organization. Shit, I'm sorry, excuse the language. Even if it's a baseball club or a bridge committee, like a bridge club,
You want to see a civilian level army tactics or whatever? Watch the NFL every Sunday. All those guys get together and they're pumping each other up. That's what the cops do.
Yeah.
That's what the cops do. And then you mix in the mentality that it's us against them. You better shoot first because they're going to kill you. And that's the thing. Officers have families. Officers have babies. We're not talking about all of you guys. But there's some of you guys that need to be policed your damn self. Bunch of bullies running around ruining it for everybody else.
But then that gets into a deeper question of, and this is gonna sound horrible too. They're talking about it, psychological examinations as well as IQ tests and supposed education level. These are supposed to be things to combat that type of I don't want to say sociopath or psychopathy, but I mean that's what it is at a core level.
Behavior.
Yeah, at a core level. So it's how are they weeding these people out? And once again,
and this is where
these people are being trained to do exactly what it is that they're doing, which is how they can continuously be told, like they get caught on camera putting their knee in somebody's neck and killing them. I can't breathe. Yet you still get officers doing this 2 days later, 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, still doing the exact same tactics. It's because this is what they've been trained to do. You can't train a pit bull to be a killer and then not expect them to kill.
I'm gonna go even deeper than that. We have black people chilling on the couch, eating ice cream, watching Netflix. You can't even make it through your house
without getting shot.
Breonna Taylor's killers are still at large.
I mean,
those police officers, they have not went to. They're still free.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And she was asleep.
Yeah.
There was Breonna Taylor. There was the Botham Jean. There was the young lady who was in the house with her nephew playing games and everything, and somebody's flashing flashlights and got the gun at the window, and she pulled out her piece. The cop shoot. Don't even identify herself. Yeah. There were at least 2 to 3 other no-knock warrants that went the sideways. I mean, that's what when we talk about it, all of these can't be mistakes.
And
they can't be
and since George Floyd, they have killed more people. You can't take a timeout.
No.
If anything, they ramp up the aggression.
Yep.
Because now they're super adrenaline rush. Now it's really fight. It's not flight. It's all fight now.
If you want to talk about, a lot of people like to bring up the whole few bad apples type shit. Aside from, we all know the Chris Rock bit where, you can't have a few bad apples with airline pilots. If one pilot crashes, then you don't say it's a few bad. It's a couple bad apples. Like this is a profession where there can be no fucking bad apples. Period.
There's no room for error.
There can be there's no bad apples. Yeah. And again, getting back to systemic racism and systemic bullshit. There's a reason. If there is just a few bad apples, they wouldn't be as blatant as they are doing this shit. The cops that killed George Floyd knew they were being recorded and still did it and still continued. Why? Because they knew that countless other officers got off. Some of them didn't even get fired.
Right.
None of them went to jail,
Yeah.
and they knew that they're going to be protected. So they don't care. Like,
If anything,
that's
they get paid
that's
leave.
And that's the biggest problem is there's no checks and balances it's set up. There's no punishment. They all know because of these police unions, they all know that they can go ahead. I mean, some of these guys got 10, 15 infractions against them of abuse of power in some form or fashion. In fact, if I'm not correct, I don't know exactly how correct I am on this, but I believe that the current Fraternal Order of Police in Chicago, he is not a cop right now here. He can't practice being a cop because he's on some sort of case, like he's being sued and he's on leave, but he was voted in, and I think he has like 18 or 19 violations against him, like 18 or 19. Like, what does that tell you about the system? There's no checks and balances. These guys, they laugh at the idea of getting in trouble again, and they don't. When they get sued and the state sues them, or they get or the people sue them for whatever happened, it comes. We have to pay for it, right? We as taxpayers pay for that.
Every
so
time
they don't
a
even
cop kills a black man, white taxpayers are losing money. That's that. If nothing else, that should be something to make even the most raunchest of staunchest of conservatives just flip out. Like, yo, this is costing me money. No, stop it.
What about, and they don't lose their pension, and so why don't we just start making them pay for all their own mistakes out of their pension? You know, I think you got to figure out some way to kind of bust up these unions.
Or what you can do is, even before it goes that deep, what you do is, and I've heard and read some things where they're starting to look at, actually, I'm not even going to go there yet. Because I think this is a perfect transition into talking about defunding the police. I think there's a misconception when people say defund the police. But then there's also some people that are out there that probably wouldn't mind police being gone. But before then, because this is what I was going to say, and then whatever. So we're talking about, police, giving police reason or not giving police reason to jack people up. But then wasn't it just this weekend where there was, how many people died in Chicago? Wasn't it like a record-breaking weekend for homicides or whatever?
It was a bad weekend.
Yes.
I don't know what the numbers.
It was a horrible weekend, and I guess the numbers honestly don't matter. But the point is, when you go to talk to people about police messing normal people up, it's inevitable. Something like this happens, and then you get those folks, and it's not just white folks. There's a lot of folks just talk out of both sides of their mouth, and it's crazy. It's crazy. So look, what do you say to people that say, well, it's fine that you don't want police beating you up, but look at what's happening in the inner city Chicago?
So here's the thing about that. We as black people, we're in these neighborhoods, in these conditions, as a direct result of slavery. And a lot of the laws that we have to live by are a little bit different than the laws that other people live by, right? So there's things that is able to live in our communities that wouldn't be able to live in others' communities, like drugs, right? Um, uh, um, uh, uh, Gang violence. Um, uh, these things thrive in the hoods because it's there for it to thrive. Like there's no, like, the school systems are bad. Um, there's nothing. There's
No hope.
there's no, like, well, not even hope. Like, you can't even, where I live at right now, I have to travel. Like, I can't walk to the grocery store. Like, there's nothing built up in the hood for us. You know what I'm saying? So what I would like to tell people is that things happen in the hood because we don't have.
Right.
And there's no I can't say, there's no rhyme or reason to it, like, it's just what it is, because these are the conditions that have been put down on us.
Right.
You know what I mean? And all of it has everything to do with villain, like making black the villain. You know what I mean? Like, all right, you got these kids in school, you tell them that they can't be, like, my grandfather told me when he was a kid, he raised his hand. They was like, well, what are you going to be when you grow up? He was like, I want to be a doctor. His teacher laughed at him, was like, hey, you got to be pretty smart to do that, right, kid? You know that to this day, he remembers that, and he could have probably been something with the right
encouragement,
with the right teachings behind him. You know what I mean? But this was taken away from him and his friends. So
it's yeah.
It's just like anything. I mean, it's again, it's understanding. It's people having to understand what caused the current situation and how that becomes, just as you were saying before, Doe, when or Monty, when saying, so you go from being a slave and you're free. Okay, well, you don't have a job, and now you're going and you're looking for work, you're looking for family, you're getting to do that. Well, eventually you're going to migrate to different places. You're going to move to different places because of family or because there might be a new opportunity somewhere. You come to a place like Chicago, and just like anything else, it's there's segregation. There's it may not be actually pulling someone and saying you are going to live here, but obviously there are things in place to put certain people in certain positions. So you do that, and then it just keeps compounding, and you don't want educated people. Educated people are dangerous people. So you want to keep people as ignorant as possible. And then, gangs can start up for protection. You have the police and everybody coming to harass you for no reason at all. So guess what? We need to protect ourselves. So then you start there, but obviously then that morphs into different ways. If you don't have things, and you don't have, you're not getting a store built on your corner, you're not getting any economic help with anything like that. Well, you got to feed your family somehow. So what are you going to do? Oh, somehow there happens to be drugs that gets dropped in here. So guess what? I can make money easily doing that way. And then things just kind of blossom from there. And then on top of that, you have the police reality, who is not to protect and help people, is to treat people as first as you are a criminal. We are going after the bad guys and you are a bad guy. So it's just a big melting pot. That's why it's like the solution is not black and white. It's not black and white. It's not bad people versus bad. There's a bunch of shit that has gone into this, and you have to understand a lot of it before you can spout off and say one thing or another about a Black Lives Matter movement or something like that.
Once people understand that slavery never ended. It never ended. It just changed forms, right?
Just morphed into a new thing.
Once people realize that it never ended, they can stop saying that Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves. I actually even heard that Amani might be able to, like, he might know something about this, but I heard recently that they gave slave owners stimulus checks after, like,
After the
okay,
Civil
cool.
War, for
Yeah.
if you lost property, you were reimbursed for that property lost. That's why I was saying it would sound kind of snarky about saying Black Lives Mattered a little bit more back when you were considered like actual property. But in the context and consideration of this country, yes, when property, you were a tad bit more valuable, and when they lost their value or their property, they had to get recompense from the government. So that's exactly what happened. They got stimulus checks. And just remember, not everybody owned slaves down south. Some had domestic servants that they would call slaves. It was a large portion had less than 5 people working on a farm sharecropping. Big planters out there with 10 or 20 more, the ones who could afford to send slaves to the Civil War to fight for them on the South Side so that their children or them didn't have to go do it. So when you hear tales about the black people who were fighting on the Southern side for the Civil War, just know that they probably weren't doing it unless they were either told by their masters that they would be manumitted immediately after serving whatever time, meaning freed immediately after serving time, and or they were sending their slaves to draft dodge, so to speak, so that their children and themselves didn't have to go. So it's just a funny thing. So yes, just to agree with you and to say you're absolutely right. They did get stimulus checks.
And
So
let's,
so so go ahead. Go ahead, Carlos.
I, I was just going to chime in to say this is part of the systemic part that we continue to reference, right? We had people in Chicago killing folks. Every once in a while, we have people stealing stuff. Never once did that ever bring down the economy. But then you have people on Wall Street that are stealing people's retirements. And then when the economy crashes, they get bonuses. Do you see the inequities that are happening? The inequality. When we say shit is not fair, that's exactly what we're talking about. A little black girl went to jail, got arrested for stealing, what was it, a doll? Wall Street took down the world
Hey, but
and
wait
they
a
got
minute.
bonuses.
Yeah, but they started piecemeal associating that with poor and or people of color by saying, oh, it was them taking subprime mortgages that they couldn't afford when they were being preyed upon by these people, even if they could get something better than a subprime mortgage with their credit and the jobs that they had, which many of them could, they were still forced into subprime mortgages. And unfortunately, the American dream is about owning a house, and you're telling people that they're supposed to be upwardly mobile and to do better for themselves, and you're dangling this carrot on the stick. They don't realize that inside the carrot is either rotten with maggots or they got it laced with razor blades, son. It's
Right.
like,
They're not going to
come
give you the
on.
good carrots.
Yeah, so it's just it's once again getting back to the systemic racism issue. It's sad. It's insidious. And since most people who don't read and don't like to learn history about this country, the history of this country, they think that it's all just happening for the first time now. When, as everyone said, it's an avatar with a new skin. It's Fortnite character that just got the new costume.
Yeah.
The same character.
So it's crazy. Like white people have been calling me like, "Hey, how you doing? Like, are you okay?" And I'm like, "COVID's the only thing different outside, right?" And while I'm talking to them, I tell them, I'm like, "Look, if you really if you really want to understand this, like the easiest thing I can tell you is go watch Trading Places. Like like go watch Trading Places and you'll have a little bit of understanding of exactly what the fuck has went down, right? Like it's not so heavy to where they think I'm like, fuck you, white devil, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, but it's nice enough where Eddie Murphy can laugh his way into your heart and show you exactly what the fuck this is, you know. So yeah, Trading Places is a good
Yeah.
one.
So I was circling back to you, Sean, about you have to like go further away for like a grocery store or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's the same thing. It's this is why Chicago is so segregated because like when my mom bought a house, she was looking around like all over the place, but they, you know, in hindsight, they literally drew that red line and placed her in Logan Square in the 1970s because all of Logan Square was black and Latino.
Right.
They placed her in there, even though she went to look at a house in Schaumburg, which was a new up and coming whatever, you know. But I mean, I'm glad I didn't grow up in Schaumburg. I'd
Sure.
rather grow up in Logan Square in the 1980s. Um, but it's the same thing. Today, you can't get a good loan for a good house that you can afford in a neighborhood that you want because they won't give it to you because of your skin color.
Yeah.
Even though you can afford it, they won't give it to you. It's just that whole thing of systematically being placed wherever that bank wants you.
And
You know what I mean? And you
even if
can't
you
get a loan for a grocery store. Like I want to open up a grocery store, it's going to be harder for me to do it than for somebody who isn't, me or who isn't, black.
Like a brown.
Who is,
Yeah.
yeah, it's harder for us to get a bigger loan to like, yo, there's no grocery store here. We could make this sustainable and you won't lose your money, but they won't do it.
Oh,
But if
because they have a bunch of things. The crime around there, the
yeah,
investments,
they'll
the
whatever,
insurance is
yeah,
going to be too. The
always.
property value is
Yes,
depressed. The reason it's depressed is because you won't give us any money over here.
exactly.
and
So
even
it's
if
it's
you had
it's
the
a full
money, let me throw
circle.
this in real quick. Even if you had the money, like let's just say maybe you had some LeBron James money. Let's just say, and you bought a big house in a neighborhood who wrote "Get Out and Bomb." Look at that.
Mm-hmm.
That's a fact. So even if you do have the money to hang out with these people, they're still going to spray paint and bomb on your garage. You want to live in that neighborhood? You want to live in that community?
Same thing happened to Mr. T.
Yep.
Tell them.
He bought a house in the suburbs of Chicago, and
Tell them.
his neighbors hated him, but he could
Yep.
afford, his big giant yard. And if he wanted to cut that tree down, it's his yard to cut
I
that tree.
That's
remember
right.
that.
Tree.
That's right.
Yeah, it's true.
That's right.
They were mad at him about cutting that tree
He went
down.
out there with a fucking chainsaw and just took that motherfucker down. Was like, yep.
Yep. And it was hard on him because Mr. T was always anybody who ever met Mr. T always said how nice of a person he
Yeah,
was,
sure.
how cool
Yeah.
and how gentle and how much
Yeah.
of a down to earth person he was. So for him to go off and say, "I'm gonna cut my tree," they had to really piss him off, and he just was proving a point. He was like, "I'm
Or
Mr.
maybe
T."
he just didn't want that tree there. It's his damn tree.
I know. I'm saying that's what I'm saying. Like, but
All them-
come on, man. Tell me I can't cut tree
To-
on property. It's like the Filipino gentleman who painted Black Lives Matter on his house in was that
Oh,
San
San
Francisco or
Francisco,
Seattle?
yeah.
And the lady was like,
Yeah.
"Yo,
What are
you
doing?
can't do that because I know who owned the house. Evidently, you don't know." Like, come on.
That's the balls that these people have with the sense of entitlement. They feel they can just flat out fucking lie, and it's okay because I'm
They
white,
can
I'm
get away
right,
with it.
Well, as long as the police are protecting them,
right?
you know what I mean? Like she has no fear, or people these people have no fear because the police are on their side.
Right.
They are, they don't have to fear they don't have to fear being wrong with black or brown people, because guess what? If I call the police, you will die.
Again, the checks and balances are so fucked up in this country.
Yeah,
It
I mean
is.
there's a reason the Karen in the New York park called the cops on the Black Bird Watcher,
Yeah.
and she and she said there's an African American like
Yes.
there's a reason that she said that. She didn't call and say, man, this guy is
Weaponizes her
harassing me in the
whiteness.
park. Like
There's a big
there's
black
reason
dude who's coming at me. I'm a poor white girl. That's what that was. And it's such a funny thing because it reminds me of when that young man who was coming back from McDonald's happened to see something weird going on at his next door neighbor's house. And this man had kidnapped 3 girls and they were in his house for how many years? And he was like, I didn't realize it. And you know it's got to be something when a beautiful, he actually said on tape, it's got to be
little white
in this country when a pretty little white girl come run into a black man and save him. And then he looked at the camera like this. So it's just like, it's getting once again into the mentality that's even ingrained into the people who are peaceful and who are saving. He's like, yo, this is odd. I knew something had to be really wrong that this little white girl is running to me, a black man, for help to save them.
Even to make it like to put a lot like more weight on it, it's nothing but Emmett Till.
Oh, thank you.
Again and again and again. Like,
and again,
she's safe. She's safe because these white men are protecting her. The police, the world, which is owned by white men. You know what I'm saying? Like it's protecting her, so she can say whatever the fuck she want to say, and be all right. Until that one
bite
day,
the white man in the butt now. It's
Oh,
coming back to bite them in the buttocks now. Me too. And I'm not saying that these movements aren't necessary. What I'm saying is that you've allowed a certain group of individuals to get away with lying on other individuals and getting them killed and in trouble and normalizing that type of behavior. And now some of them may be doing the same thing to you. I'm not saying they are. I'm not making any judgment calls. I'm just saying that there's now a possibility, since you have all of these white men who are now complaining that they're being attacked and they're being put down upon by people saying we're harassing them and raping them and sexually assaulting them. And like, if there are some that aren't telling the truth, like we've seen some happen in the athlete who had video recording for whatever reason, I think I'm conflating stories, but what I'm saying is that now you're finding out that the sword cuts both ways.
And I believe in an interview and like on her deathbed, she finally confessed to lying.
Fuck her.
Yep.
So here's the thing. That just.
But they say that she was scared that if she didn't go along with it, that she would get in trouble.
Well, that's all.
Fuck her.
Fuck her. That to me is, see what maybe like. It just goes to show you the evil, the fucking the devil that's in people to make up a lie on a little child, and she knew what was going to happen.
Of course.
100%.
No way she didn't know what was going to happen.
So the system inherently is just the fucking devil.
Well, is it the system or is it the people who inhabit the system? We say that it's the people who inhabit the system created the system, so it's an evil system because they created it? Or
of course it's the people, because the people are the ones that created it, and it's the continuation of this perpetuation of evil that continues to flow.
Now I'm going to play Carlos's role. Then why are we constantly trying to fix this system? We're admitting that it's an inherently evil system that was designed and created for this specific purpose.
I say
and it's fulfilling its purpose. So build and destroy. What lesson is that?
Destroy and rebuild.
For the 5% nation of guys and nerds out there. We need
it needs to be completely. It needs to be completely destroyed and rebuild, because altering it is. That's why I'm like destroy these unions. You got to take everything. I mean, I don't know how it happens, but it has to come down.
Yeah.
Well, for those to get back to that real quick, but for those doing the white argument of people shouldn't be looting and rioting and burning buildings and all that kind of stuff. The system hasn't been fixed. okay, you're ignorant enough to not understand that the system was designed the way that it is. Okay. But the system has people have been trying to fix the system for hundreds of years now, and it's not being fixed. So what the fuck else are people going to do who feel that there's nothing else that they can do? What are they supposed to do?
I think the
Walk
difference.
away.
I think the
Walk
difference.
away.
I think
Walk
this
away.
is why today is so important for this, because before, I mean, most of us remember when we didn't carry a goddamn computer in our pockets, right? So before, people would be saying, Emmett Till looked at this white lady and, we got to take her word for it. So then they kill him, right? How many times have we heard stories, especially in the 70s and 80s? 70s, my dogs just walked in and scared me. I thought they were coming for me. In the 70s and 80s, you say, yo, back then black folks had a lot of Spanish names. I knew a lot of black Carloses, right? Carlos got jacked up by the cops. Oh, what'd he do? Well, he didn't do anything. He was just chilling. Oh, yeah, right. Right? And then, there was a cop that pulled over my girl over here and he forced her to have sex. Oh, no, that's bullshit. What'd she do? Right? It was always victim blaming, right?
Mm-hmm.
Victim blaming is part of it. That's why when white women come through and say, yo, white dude over here, he told me to either give him a little lovin' or I don't get the part. White women are telling you this. So now, all of a sudden, now we have black folks that are recording things and they're still questioning. We got it on video.
Mm-hmm.
My girl, my little, what was it? She was like 8 years old, 9 years old in the backyard having not a barbecue, but a birthday party. And the cops jumped over the fence and whooped her ass. We got that on video. People were like, oh, what was she doing? She was busy being 8. Blowing out candles and shit.
Mm-hmm.
So then when you toss in this Me Too movement and all this other stuff, this is where it becomes very, very important for us to keep our foot on the gas, because there's a bunch of black folks who are done getting fucked up. There's a bunch of ladies that are tired of getting mistreated. They're brown folks. You guys better line up. You guys better line up. I've seen a lot of folks that just don't quite see the writing on the wall. Y'all better wake the fuck up.
I believe that
we're trying to shout out to our brown brothers, like, hey, if they doing it to us, they coming for y'all next, but they're not listening up on it.
Here's my thing. My thing
a bunch
is
of brown
that
babies in a goddamn cage right now.
Yep.
And it's been constant since the 1980s.
Yeah.
I think that once people realize that the saying Black Lives Matter it goes with everyone.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you can get them to realize that black people who are really just original brown people, you know what I mean? If you get people to realize that matters, then everything else from the ground up gets lifted. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I like personally, I have a problem with brown pride for Black lives, because I just think that everybody's brown, and if you're saying Black Lives Matter, you have to own your you're part of Africa, mm-hmm. and be like, okay, cool, I matter too because I am only from Africa. You know what I mean? You are. I see. Amani wants to say something. So
that's
brother.
Once again, people like to be amnesic. Like, they don't want to admit Why are we the skeleton in the closet, man? Why? I don't get it. Like, why is it having a black relative in your family like scandalous? You all through Mexico, Ecuador, Guatemala, Guyana, like Central, South America. It's like so many black folk down there and nobody knows it. I mean, here in the States, North America, they're pretty ignorant to like just the diversity of South and Central America in its entirety. But why are we the black sheep? Why is it something not to be proud of? Why do we have to even, like you say, make the differentiation that Black Lives Matter? We're screaming it because y'all acting like it don't. How long have we gave you, like, our mothers gave you breast milk, y'all babies breast milk and raised them up from little tykes, and you taught them to hate us and hate the children that played with them side by side until they reached a certain age? You taught to hate the people who bled first for the country that you claim to be so proud for, at least what it stands for now, Crispus Attucks. Come on, how are you doing that to yourself? How are you doing that to yourself consciously? You're giving yourself a psychosis here in this country by doing what you're doing to us, your brothers, your blood brothers, complete through and through. You're giving yourself, white America, a complete and total psychic breakdown because you can't reconcile the fact that we've been here, we've helped, and that we don't even want to hurt you the way that you want to hurt us.
Right.
That we're still coming out in love with this whole thing.
We don't want to hurt you at all. So
give us the fruit and let us grow.
So what's cool about us as Midway, you know, being a part of this thing called hip hop, that was created by black and brown people, you know what I mean? Like, but because hip hop is so inclusive, it's kind of indicative of who we are as people.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, you know, we didn't just create hip hop and was like, fuck everybody else. It's just us. You know what I mean?
Right. What can you bring to the table?
And hip hop damn near controls every fucking thing. So if we created something so powerful as hip hop, and we're not like, hey, you fuckers stole the way we talk. You put religion on us. You did all this. We created this whole new religion called hip hop, and was like, no, it's cool. Everybody's involved. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You can tell, like, that's where our energy is.
Yeah.
Versus this energy that's out in the street that's continually trying to kill us, has been trying to kill us for over 400 years, and probably will still continue to do it for years to come. You know what I mean?
But will not succeed.
No. It won't, because that's in the books, right?
Well,
but
scientifically, they say by the year 2050, more than half the Earth's population is supposed to be brown and black, like over 3/4 of the Earth's population anyway. So they're saying that it's a last ditch mode for survival in their minds, at least.
Sure.
At least according to their scientists, it's like we're gonna cease to exist as a race. And the question is it a race or a culture that you're fearing that you'll cease to exist as? Will it be the cultural of like the paternalistic culture? Is it the culture of capitalism? What are you truly afeared of losing? Really, when they say they're going to look, is it like it's got to be power and the ability to lord over other people that they're better than somebody else.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And it's the illusion of power that they've been taught over the years. It's not really power, but it's the illusion.
What happens if our banking system truly crashes? What power will they truly have if they don't have commerce? What other power? How could they? Physical power is what they believe they have, power in arms and everything, but I still say that they don't really want that smoke like that. Otherwise, they would have set it off a long time ago.
Yeah.
Because they've had numbers, they've had ample opportunity, advantages all over the place. It's something to keep the plebes or the sheep entertained, prepping for a race war that they hope will happen, and they do things to possibly make it happen. And the people sitting at top, who has tons of money, and who are like, you think Bill Gates care, dude? You think Bezos cares? You think Musk cares? They'll put on a show just as long as it gets them that money. But bruh,
Right.
white, black, brown, yellow, pink, purple, you are expendable
Well,
as well.
if you
Either
told
you're
Musk,
in the plus column or the minus column.
And
yeah,
unfortunately, if you're a white person with no money, which unfortunately is most of my white friends, how did I lose that lottery ticket? But
As Ryan rolls his eyes.
he feels the pain. He feels the pain. And that's the thing that y'all need to come to grips with. They're teaching you to fight against us. We're trying to fight with you to make everything equal. Get that through your head. We're not trying to fight with you.
Yeah.
We're trying to fight for equality.
Fighting
Meanwhile,
with
they
you,
got
bro.
you thinking that you're better than everybody else. I'm not gonna bad talk you, but like I met a lot of you folks. You're not. Sorry.
We all have stinky farts.
Sorry. Yeah. Like I've talked to people that have thought that they were smarter than me, and I'm like, sit down. Let's talk. Whatever you want to talk about, I think I might got something for you. So you can't just come in and like think that you got it like that, because you don't. You don't. And with that being said, taking down symbols of oppression and correcting history and all that stuff. When do we know whose microphone is that? Someone is loud AF. I can't tell who it is.
B.
Um,
Good job.
oh, before I forget, here's another movie that you guys should watch. Right after watching Trading Places, go and get A Bug's Life. Watch that. Go learn up. Go learn up. That's a very palatable movie for you. Anyway,
You got to get simple with them, right?
because it's not that it's a hard
movie's not
message to
simple.
have to consume. It's a hard message, so you have to make it palatable for people.
Yep.
Because if you're under the impression, it's almost like waking up in the Matrix. Like people have been telling you, wake up, Neo, wake up, and you're like, I don't want to see it. No. This is not the real world. Wake up. Anyway, with that being said, I wanted to go back to like correcting history and this taking down of monuments. Like, how do we know what's the line? How do we know when to stop?
You mean how do we know when it's time to take them down, or
No, how do we know?
Or which ones to take down and which ones not.
Yes.
okay? So I think I was talking to you guys the other day about it, and I was telling you about my belief in not taking them down, right? And the only reason why I think right now is not the best time to take them down is because I don't need white people trying to erase. Like from my standpoint, I believe that I was always taught that a man that don't treat you right won't teach you right.
Mm-hmm.
And because I've come up in the public school system, I understand what they teach us about slavery. I also know that slavery is such a hard thing to like. If white people feel like they don't want to address it, think about the people who've been through it, and they have kids who are growing up that they don't want to, their children. They want them to live a child's life, and they don't want to say, take them to see X or take them to see, Roots or something like that, because they want them to be a kid as long as possible. So then they don't get the proper teachings of, their roots. You know what I mean? So if we don't know as a people who these people were, like who Robert E. Lee was and what type of person he is. If they take those statues down, I think that's one way of erasing slavery. Like, I think sometimes people need a constant reminder that it's a real thing until they know that it's a real thing, and then those things can be taken down. But I also know, on the other hand, fuck them statues, and they need to come down.
That's
you know what I mean?
The thing is, it's how they're presented, right? The information, how the information is presented. So I have not seen in person all these statues that have been taken down, right? Because I don't live in that area.
Right.
But is that Robert E. Lee meant to glorify him? How is it being presented? Does it talk about, what does it say? And in my view is, I'm assuming that most of these are offensive as fuck to everybody.
Yes.
And that's the thing. Like, absolutely not. You can't erase history. In fact, you can re-put another statue there explaining who he was in a different way that doesn't look like it's some sort of glorification to him.
Right.
And then obviously, there's tons of statues that we have of people like this that have been glorified. So, yeah, I agree. You absolutely, erasing history is the worst thing we could do. But
the statues do need to come down. They do need to come down. But and the only reason why I gave that view was because I remember talking to you guys about it the other day, and I was like, yo, like, I think people need to be reminded before it's erased.
It's a super valid point.
But they need to come down. Just like I was talking to somebody about it the other day, and they were like, there's no way a Hitler statue would be any fucking where. You know what I mean? Like, there's no way that statue. But
that's the thing. They tear down, like, when dictators get taken over, they'll rip down, like when they took over Iraq and Saddam Hussein, they brought Hussein's statue down. It's kind of similar to that, but I wholeheartedly agree. You have to replace it with something in order for the history to be there.
So, do we continue from the statues to the schools to the names of the streets? Do we take the presidents off the money? Do we get ready? And that there's a lot of changing. There's a lot of changing up that's going necessary. I mean, we're talking about Bedford Park. Nathan Forrest Bedford. He was a big racist. Like I say, we got a couple of Lees around here. What about the ones that we know were like closeted racists that came out later, with the eugenics movement? Do we get rid of those schools? Do we get rid of Planned Parenthood? I'm with Carlos in a weird sort of way. Like, where does the buck stop? Or does it just, like Doe and you were saying, do we just go on a massive education campaign to make sure people are aware of how these organizations or these statues started and what they mean, both sides of the coin? That's a big, massive education movement. Yeah, most people don't like to be educated. So we're at another one. And then, okay.
Yeah, because Robert E. Lee, all those fellas, if you were on the other side, if you did not fight, and I'm saying this as a soldier, I'm saying this as someone who has the red, white, and blue on my shoulder, and I will be wearing that flag for the rest of my life.
Right.
If you fight against that flag, fuck your statue.
That's what I'm saying. It feels almost treasonous to glorify these guys because they succeeded from America.
Sure.
But we gave them over. We gave it over to them. I think it was Rutherford B. Hayes in the backroom compromise. So, I mean, we conceded power if we're going to talk about political things. They knew they won when they had the whole Reconstruction movement come into place in the 1870s. Right. They burned everything that the Civil War was supposed to be about down. So, yeah, it's an interesting one. It's treasonous. And just to end that whole thing off, if we're supposed to be a Christian nation, then there shouldn't be any graven images anywhere, any place.
And can we
so
stop
yank
that
all those
too?
suckers down.
Can we stop that too? That's
stop. Now you're really getting in trouble. Ooh,
stop.
Yeah, talk about not being a democratic Christian nation.
Stop.
You're gonna get us shut down. Skype is gonna. Boys in Black gonna be at our house with silent helicopters.
Like they aren't already.
We've been talking for a long time. There's 1,000 different roads that we can go down, and we are definitely going to have more conversations about this. I don't want to end the conversation, but I do want to kind of bring it back because it's something that I had found earlier and wasn't able to fit it in quite yet. But back to what Chad was saying, and we were talking about police unions and defunding the police and that kind of stuff. This is from Crane's Chicago Business from 2016. So this was 4 years old.
Okay.
In all, Chicago has paid a staggering sum, about $662 million on police misconduct since 2004, including judgments, settlements, outside legal fees, according to city records. The payouts for everything from petty harassment to police torture have brought more financial misery to a city already drowning in billions of dollars of pension debt. Almost $700 million in, as of this, 12 years, which all of us pay for who live in the city.
Right.
So to get back to Chad's point, one of the major things that they can do is stop that police union bullshit. And that's the thing. It's again, nothing is fucking black and white. And that's what I hate about how we've gone as a society, especially over the last, I mean, it's been going on for a while, but especially the last, 10 or 15 years. Everything is so black and white. If you're for this, you're against this. It's like that. It's like, no, there's a whole lot of gray area in all of this. So we all agree, generally, I think unions are good. There's a reason unions existed in the first place, is because the working people were getting fucked over and they needed to do that kind of stuff. So we agree with that. But the police unions here, they all protect each other, and they're
civil servants. What do they need a union for?
Exactly. They work for us. If you make the change of having all of these settlements come out of police pensions and police paying for these things, you're going to see a lot of stuff straighten up real fast. Real
you
fast.
Want to see it straighten up, like even before we have a problem. Because that and all of us are guilty of this. We always look at something and we say, well, if we do this, we can do. But if we go a little further, I'm trying to train my brain to do this, right? So to me, defunding the police doesn't mean you're not going to have police on the streets. Let's not go crazy. Defunding means this. Why in God's name is Officer Friendly rolling through the streets in a tank? And then you're expecting people not to get triggered. Come on. So this is what we do to defund the police. What we're going to do, and I made this point last time a few of us were talking. The police are officially part of the military-industrial complex. Why? Because we can't just walk around blowing things up without retribution, or eventually some of us are going to wake up and be like, why did we blow up Iraq? Because of what? We need more than just fuzzy ass pictures, right? People are going to want to ask, what are you doing with that money, right? So what they do is, if you have reached peak bombs, which apparently there is no such thing, you have to, as a business person, you can't just make websites. You have to make websites and then continue to figure out different ways to make money. So what you do is, okay, the Army is stocked, Navy is stocked, Air Force is stocked, National Guards is stocked, Navy's set, all these folks are set. So now what do? You convince people that black people are going to steal your babies and take your groceries and all this stuff. So now you sell all the tanks to the cops. And now if you're going down whacker, you see this thing that you can go into Iraq and take over by yourself. So that is what's happening. The police were never supposed to be like this. So you defund, you demilitarize the police, And you take all these knuckleheads that continue to beat people up and you kick them the hell out because they have an anger management problem. And what you do is all this money that you have that you're paying for fucking people up for no reason, and all the money that you have that you're paying these morons that don't know how to control themselves, what you do is you invest that into training, and then you invest that into paying a little bit higher salary for the cops because you want good cops. You don't want to pay bad cops, and you don't want to pay the people that the bad cops continue to fuck up. Number
we
one.
haven't even gotten in. Sorry, we haven't even gotten into like police training or anything like that, and the little amount of time it takes in the United States for somebody to become a police officer, as opposed to a bunch of other major countries in the world. Like
it takes
I don't
less
forget
time.
what it was. It was like
it takes less time to become a police officer than it is a barber.
Yeah. So that's, like that right there should just piss people off. Like you shouldn't, it's not an express program to go like that's, it shouldn't be like that. Got a lot of things happening here because I just see so many things. I see people sharing, dumbass memes about, well, who's gonna come and save you if there's no police and all this other kind of stuff. I'm not gonna talk about the hashtag and the saying defund the police. I'm not gonna blame somebody for starting a hashtag or whatever and then it catching on and stuff like that. They're not marketing people that are trying to do this. Could there be a better term? Probably. But as I said to some people before, if you believe that defund the police means to disband the police, you're a grade A moron.
That's right.
And in 2020, Chicago Police Department got budgeted $1.8 billion is the 2020 Chicago Police budget. $1.8 billion.
And how much did the Chicago public school system get?
Exactly. In 2018, the city spent $113 million to settle police misconduct cases. What could you do with that $113 million?
So in 2012, we were at 700 and something. So we're saying that not only did we just give them a budget of $1.5 billion for 2020, but from about 2.8, 1.8. But you said prior to that, in the 2000s up until 2012, there were almost $700 million in lawsuits settled by the Chicago Police Department,
which we get to flip the bill for.
Yeah, and then yeah. So that's $300 billion. I mean, that's $3 billion that taxpayers have technically footed the bill for this corrupt. Yeah, that's interesting.
And then take a look at this, because this is not even me talking. This is like scientists talking. These are facts. A society that has, period. A society that doesn't have to worry about basic things like food, like a home, like in a highly educated society, everyone wins. And crime goes down. The higher the education, the lower the crime rate.
Yep.
And if you treat people like prisoners, here's another story. This one, I love telling this one. So last year, we were in Austria. And I was going to go meet up with my buddy. And he's like, no, just take the train, whatever. I was like, all right, cool. So we walk in. If you've ever taken a train in Austria, it's crazy. You walk in, they have these machines. You go, you put your little money in, spits out the ticket. You walk over and you sit there and you wait for the train. There's no security guard. There's no turnstile. There's no police officers. There's no one. And then you get on the train. And then I'm sitting there on the train. I got to my stop, got out, still looking around, still no security guards, still no turnstiles, still none of that stuff. And I went over to my buddy and I said, yo, what's with the train station? Like, you guys don't have any of this extra stuff that we have in the States. Like, all I did was like walk up, and he goes, well, there was a machine for the ticket, right? I go, yeah. He goes, you bought a ticket, right? I go, yeah. He goes, why the fuck do we need security guards? That's the difference. We are treated like caged animals here. We're convinced that people are after us all the time. Systemic racism. We're taught this shit from when we first come out. And if you grow up like I did, half a block away from the fucking projects, you see some shit and you think that that's normal behavior. You think that, oh, okay, well, the cops are just supposed to fuck me up then, okay, cool.
Carlos, is it systematic xenophobia that then morphs into racism because I guess the easiest marker for difference is skin color? And it's just the fear of something that's alien and foreign to them because they blow up other cultures too that look just like them.
Crazy, right? Crazy, right?
So, yeah, it gets deeper and deeper and deeper when you get down to it, and it's just confusing.
Right.
And all we want to do is I think most cultures just want good food, good family, good music, and fun, and everybody's happy.
You want to see, like, here's another example of the difference. Go to a grocery store in the hood. There's like bulletproof glass. There's things are kind of messy all the time. And then you go to a good one, like a grocery store. I remember going to the first time I went to a grocery store in Schaumburg. It was carpeted. I thought I fucking made it. I swear to God. I walked in, I was like, oh, shit, I am here. I am here.
Carlos, so I was with my boy Mark. Many people know my boy Marcus Pickle. And so I'm out by his house, right? And I go into the grocery store, and people are giving you stuff the sample. He was like, yo, no, just go, like you can eat this. Like he went up to like this bar that had like nuts and cranberries and stuff like that. He just started eating them. He was like, this is what we do out here in the suburbs. Like he's like, it's okay. Like you can do this too. I'm like, fuck that and fuck y'all. Like, exactly.
And going back about 60 seconds though, if you're not from the city and you're not close to some of these environments and you're in your little white bubble somewhere, and all you see on the news, especially if you're watching something like Fox News or any of that kind of crap, and all you see is black and brown people doing things or getting arrested, whether for no reason or not, that just furthers your mentality that, oh, well, see, troublemakers or this or that. And you don't actually get to know, or you don't know. Because that, again, the media and all that just pushes that same stereotype.
Think about how many white people that you know that when you come into Chicago, they say, oh, don't go to the South Side or don't go to the West Side. Like, I mean, people don't know what's going on the West Side or South Side. They just tell you don't go over there.
Okay, hang on.
But then,
so as you can see, we can talk about this forever, but not that the conversation is over, but we have to wrap this episode up. We're going to do this more often. We're going to get together and we're going to talk about the community, because that's what hip hop has always been. Hip hop has been all inclusive, and we used hip hop to keep each other informed of what was happening and the right way to go and the right thing to do. So we're not going away. We're going to go away for now. So with that being said, Amani Conley.
Yes.
Let people know, if they are looking for you online, where can they find you?
Hey everybody, you can find me, Amani Conley, on the Instagram at Chicago Griot. That's CHICAGO GRIOT. And that's pretty much the only place I hang out at. I shy away from social media because it distracts people from getting the real work done of educating themselves and in bettering themselves.
B-Boy B, thank you, sir, for also being here and sharing some of your stories. If people are looking for you online, where can they find you?
It's bboyb_ABC. BBOYB_ABC.
Mr. DJ Risky Business.
Yes, sir.
Get your lovely ass up here and tell us where we can find you online.
If you want to reach out to me, you can catch me on Instagram at DJRiskyBiz1975.
Excellent. Thank you again, my brother, for coming and hanging out. DJ Sean Doe. Hit us with
Yes,
them
sir.
beats, sir.
If you guys want to find me, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at DJ SEANDOE.
I'm Carlos. You can find me at coconutjustice.com and Coconut Justice everywhere else. Let me tell you what's happening on youtube.com/coconutjustice. You know how a lot of you guys are sitting there wondering what do we do next? I'm already making that happen. I'm educating people for free. Go get that in your life. We're changing the world. Hey, Ryan, take over.
And for me personally, you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at 278media. The number is 278 and media. And of course, this is the Midway Radio podcast for the Midway documentary. So you can find everything there at midwaydocumentary.com. Quick update on the project. There's a few things going on. Obviously, some things had to slow up because of the pandemic and everything that's going on, but there still are things that are being worked on, and hoping to bring this to you sooner than later. We're definitely on the the downward slide of getting this thing finished finally. So definitely not going to be another few years, but it is being worked on. So like I said, continue to check out the website and all of our social media. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram and YouTube. Midway Doc across the board. And with that, we will be back soon with another installment of Midway Radio, possibly some different guests. We're definitely going to continue this discussion. And for now, just keep doing what you lovely people are doing. And thank you, Doug Infinite, as always, for providing us with our lovely intro and outro notes.
Yeah, son. And with that, let's get it right there. With that, everybody, we'll see you in the next one. Be healthy, be safe. Watch out for each other.